morning, and thank you for joining us today. I'm Irfan Sabir, MLA for Calgary-Buller-McCall, and I'm joined by my MLA colleagues, Kathleen Ganley, MLA for Calgary-Mountain View, and my colleague MLA Samir Kayande. I would like to begin by acknowledging that we are gathered on the traditional lands of Treaty 6, and I will also recognize Métis people who share a deep connection with this land. In 2015, Albertans spoke out against an entitled, corrupt conservative government that put its friends and insiders ahead of the good of Albertans. They said no more to a government that built sky palaces instead of hospitals and schools. They said no to a government that put power ahead of people, something that was best emphasized by the 2014 floor crossing led by now Premier Danielle Smith. Danielle Smith promised Albertans that she had learned and changed from her past. But after being Premier just over a year, it's clear that she is as entitled as any of those past conservatives, perhaps even more so. And that is why we are here today. Yesterday, Albertans saw firsthand evidence that Danielle Smith gave Preston Manning $2 million contract so that he could write a political document intended to be used as a campaign tool rather than a serious attempt to improve Alberta's emergency response. Preston Manning endorsed Danielle Smith to be Premier in 2012 election. He helped organize and support Danielle Smith's 2014 floor crossing. The report he published last week, which is full of quack science and conspiracy theories, was clearly a weaponized political document. Preston Manning made that clear in the email uncovered yesterday to federal MPs. This is a substantial amount of taxpayer money given to a friend of Premier's. There was no open competition for the contract, no consideration to others who would provide objective advice and evidence how to manage a public health emergency. And today, we are here to tell Albertans that our research has uncovered that Preston Manning is far from alone, far from the only political insider getting a sweetheart deal from Danielle Smith. Since becoming Premier just over a year ago, more than $700,000 have gone to friends of the Premier in sole source contracts. No competitive bid process, just public money being shoveled to friends of Danielle Smith to develop more political weapons. Alberta Council, owned by her Premier's former Wild Rose Caucus member, Deputy House Leader and Whip, Shane Saskew, has received $175,000 in no-bid contracts. Yager Management Limited, owned by former Wild Rose President David Yager, has received $130,000 in sole source contracts since Smith became Premier. The company run by manager of Danielle Smith's leadership campaign, Matthew Altime, has received over $140,000 in sole source contracts. And then, of course, Preston Manning personally received $253,000 in a sole source contract. That is real money. This is Albertans' money going to Premier's friends without fair competition. She is literally lining the pockets of her friend during an affordability crisis. It is unacceptable, but it lines up with what exactly we have come to expect from the UCP, who are currently trying to change the laws to hike the salaries of those on agencies, boards, and commissions, and trying to change the laws so they can receive more and more expensive gifts. The gravy train is rolling now with no end in sight. To further detail the depth of the UCP, the UCP will go to pay off their friends. I will now turn things over to my colleague, Energy and Climate Critic Kathleen Ganley.
Thank you. Thank you, Irfan. I want to specifically focus on David Yager's contract. David Yeager was the president of the Wild Rose until Danielle Smith abandoned her party and crossed the floor. He was just awarded a sole source contract worth $70,000 to review the AER. The supposed reason he was the only person qualified to review the AER in a province filled with energy experts is that he was the only one able to do the work. We're left to wonder exactly what the scope of the work could possibly be if a friend and insider of the Premier's is the only person that could possibly complete it. This is a complete lack of transparency. In a review of an organization that is under significant public scrutiny right now, the UCP appointed Mr. Yeager previously to chair a panel regarding Alberta's energy future. But after spending public money on it, Danielle Smith is now refusing to let Albertans see the report they paid for. This is the panel that examined Smith's R-Star project, her wildly controversial giveaway of $20 billion to companies to clean up their own liabilities. Worse, David Yeager owns a well abandonment company, and he's leading the review of that same program. So, what is it that this latest review is going to be reviewing? What could the scope possibly be that Yeager, a deep insider who has already produced one report on a controversial subject that's now being hidden from the public, be the only one qualified to do? Will the report be released or just hidden, like the Energy Panel report? Clearly, we need an investigation, and we will be examining our options to pursue exactly that. Albertans deserve answers on these sole source contracts. From where we stand, it seems like Preston Manning is far from the only person on the UCP gravy train. And to provide even more detail about the depths that Smith will go to pay off her friends, I will now turn things over to Finance Critic for Fiscal Responsibility, Samir Kayande.
Thank you, Kathleen and Irfan. Man, these contracts are gross. You know, the UCP talks a big game about fiscal responsibility, but these contracts show that for what it is. It's talk, nothing more. Let's look at the contract provided to her campaign manager, Matthew Altime. It's specifically to develop a digital media strategy. Mr. Altime has not been hired in the political staff of the government, as best as we can tell. Instead, public money is being funneled to his private firm to do digital media work when this government has an entire community and public engagement wing that literally employs hundreds of people. And there was no further rationale provided by Smith and her government. The reasoning for the sole source states that it was sourced outside of situations where sole sourcing is permitted. Let me repeat that again. It states that it was sourced outside of situations where sole sourcing is permitted. That's right. It literally says in the submission, there was no reason to sole source this contract. Actions like these make it clear the Premier is not looking for the best advice or even the best deal. Nearly $1 million going to 4 organizations whose proponents are close, long-time political allies of the Premier. If the Premier were so sure that these were the best choices, why not have an open competition? Why not let them challenge other people and companies? The reason is simple. It's a return to the gravy train, the same sort of entitlement and cronyism that Albertans rejected with the PCs. And this is just the start. There are 2 bills in the House right now that would let the UCPs hike the salaries on those agencies, boards, and commissions, and one that would allow them to make it easy for them to get increasingly expensive gifts. Since I became an MLA, I've yet to receive an email or call or hear from a constituent who's worried about whether the Premier is getting enough expensive gifts. I've never heard from anyone who's worried that salaries on those boards just aren't high enough. I've heard, though, from people who are worried how they will make ends meet in this affordability crisis. Worried about their utility bills, worried about the cost of housing, worried about their kids trying to learn in overcrowded classrooms. It's not acceptable. And with that, I'm going to pass it back to Irfan. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Samir. Thank you, Kathleen. And we are happy to take any question that you may have.
So I'll open up to questions. For those joining by Zoom or by phone, it's this raise hand or *9 function. Start with questions in the room. We'll now move to questions on Zoom. Seeing none, that concludes today's press conference. Thank you very much.